Wake Up Carolina on the iCarter Talk Network.
And I think we disagree on this issue, but Barry Townsend is on the school board. I think it's District 1, if I'm not mistaken, Barry.
That's correct.
And welcome to you.
Thank you.
But you've been on here several times, and sometimes we're on the same sheet of music. Sometimes we aren't. But I think you're coming on because you think I'll be fair, and I want you on because I think you'll be truthful in articulating your opinion and why you think the board did the right thing. I do want to say this before I allow you to kind of go at it. You didn't vote on this because you were moving your kid into college. And duty calls, you got to take care of family before you take care of other sorts of matters. But I'll get out of the way, and I think you told me in a text, I don't think you'd mind me saying this, that you didn't vote on it, but had you been there, you would have voted for the mask mandate.
That is correct.
Okay. Have at it.
Thanks. And thanks. I wasn't there Thursday. I hated to miss this vote because I do believe it's very important. And it's the first meeting that I had missed in 8 years. So, but you're right. Sometimes duty calls, and one of the few things I will put before my responsibility is my children. And I think that is one of the things that when people call me and want to talk about this, they're immediately talking about my child, my vote, and as the superintendent alluded to the other day, I don't have that luxury. A risk I might take with my child, I can't take with yours. And as a board member, I have the responsibility to do what is the right thing for I think it's this year so far 15,529 students. Only two of those are mine. And we may all have very different opinions on exactly what is safe and what isn't. So what I have done is the same thing I would do if, and the same thing I think you would do if your child got sick, and got some disease that wasn't treatable by McLeod or MUSC. You'd go to Duke Health, or you'd go to the Mayo Clinic. You'd go to some place like that because those are the experts. I'm not an epidemiologist. When we went into the shutdown, I caught up on some yard work. Apparently, a lot of people actually became experts in viruses, but that's not what I did. And so when Duke Health tells me that, and the Mayo Clinic, both of which have very strong stances on this, they tell me that masks are the best way to keep our children safe in schools, then I really don't have a choice. I can't listen to them about one health-related thing and then just choose to not listen to them about another, not when it comes to all of the students in the district.
So your decision was based on an analysis. I mean, you didn't do it because you were afraid. You didn't do it because it was the popular thing to do. You didn't poll your district and 70% say vote for the mask and not vote for the. You did it because you went to places that you felt understood the complexities and referred and I guess deferred to some degree to their judgment.
Yeah, I absolutely. That's and I think you have to do that. And there are tons of areas that you and I aren't experts in, and we may be able to sit down and do some degree of research and analysis, and we all should do that. And especially when it comes to decisions for ourselves personally. I walked into the studio this morning unmasked. Now I chose to be vaccinated as soon as I was eligible. That was all based on analysis that I did for me. It did the same thing for my family. I do believe that the best chance, for us to get out of this is for all of us to get vaccinated. But I can't make that decision. I can't make that decision for you. Now, that's not to say that, so you have the right to make that decision. That doesn't mean there won't be repercussions if you choose not to do something. And that's the other thing. I mean, I'm disappointed at the stance that some of our neighbors are taking about the mask in schools. They've made it very personal. They've made it, this whole, this freedom argument, but they didn't make that argument about diphtheria or tetanus or polio or HIV or measles or mumps or rubella or hepatitis A or B, and you have to have vaccinations for all of those to come to school. You didn't take that stand about any of those. You've chosen to take this stand in the middle of a health crisis. And yes, there are questions that are unanswered, and yes, the research continues to come in. But I do find that frustrating. Is that okay? Fine, if you don't want to wear, you don't want your child to wear a mask. If you don't want to get vaccinated, that is a choice you make. But that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be repercussions from doing that. You can keep your child home. You can homeschool them. That's a choice you make. But all the studies say, no matter whether they say masks are 20% effective or 80% effective or whatever, they all say the same thing, that me wearing a mask protects you and you wearing a mask protects me. And so this isn't a choice about your child. It's a choice about the child that's sitting across from your child. And you don't get that right.
Not to be confrontational, but the Duke study has been highly questioned by the New York Times, who ain't no friend to conservatives and liberty-loving Republicans, about not including the unmasked results. It was exclusive to the masking, and they didn't include the unmasked. And the Times and Duke are having a big argument about, the validity or not of that. I want to go to the legalities. Representative Lowe sat here yesterday and said he believes that any school district that votes for a mask mandate, institutes a mask mandate, is in direct violation of the state proviso that says they simply can't do that. I was at lunch yesterday with a school board member in a neighboring school district, and the reason they didn't implement the mask mandate is because they didn't want to be in violation of state law.
And this is a whole different discussion, but it is incredibly ironic for any of our state legislatures to sit here and try and lecture us about not following state law when they have their own state laws about funding schools. And according to, just to give you an example, according to state law, we should have received from the state $63,912,058.04 for the school year last year. That's state law. That is not something, that's not a wish list that we asked for. This is state law based on the student-based costs plus all the other weightings they put in there. That's how much we should have received. We received $38,230,050.33. That's a shortage of more than $25.6 million. That's their law that they are breaking. They do it every year. The year before that, they shorted us $25.4 million. And so before I'm going to worry about Representative Lowe lecturing me about not following a budget proviso, I want to see him demonstrate that he can follow his own budget laws.
You got time to hang around?
Absolutely.
We've got some other things we got to take care of. Kato, we got to call in at 8:25, right? Got Carrie. Are you good on time, Barry?
Absolutely.
Because I want you to hang around, and I want to delve into some of these other things while we got you here that I think the public will be very, very interested. All of this centers on, disagreement. It's just fundamental disagreements we have about what needs to happen. But I think these are productive conversations. And I want to say this. Nobody else is doing this. These are essential conversations to create a better school district, a better county, a better state. But all we do seem to is yell and scream and talk past one another instead of with one another. And Bear's willing to engage in a civil discourse about things we fundamentally disagree on. And I think anytime we can do that, let's drag that on as long as we possibly can. Let's take a break at a couple of things we got to take care of on the other side of this. But Barry's agreed to hang around. Maybe because I asked him, maybe because he wants to get after some of them state legislators a little more, who aren't giving them all the money they think they deserve. Interesting. Take a break. Back in a minute. Hey, Barry's going to hang around with us. Barry Townsend, school board member at District 1. I think District 1 of District 1 is what Barry is, and that means you're first on the list of people who call and want to know why you no-count people have done that no-count thing to their kid. And Barry, I appreciate that, and I mean this sincerely. But this is a very important issue. And I think you guys, this is not a question as much as a comment. I think you guys have gotten you guys have gotten caught up in some of the distrust of the federal government. And I think when people hear mask or vaccine or shutdowns or lockdowns, they see Fauci, they see the CDC, the NHI, the federal government. I think that's unbelievably unfair because the best government is government closest to the people. But do you believe that some of the responses of your constituency have been shaped by things that you honestly aren't responsible for?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if I spent all of my time watching newscast and watching the every press conference that happens, I don't think I'd know which way to turn either. At the end of the day, I don't have the luxury of straddling the fence on this subject, and so I have purposefully. I'm not saying I don't listen to what is said, but that's not. I don't let that determine where I vote. As I said earlier, in the particular situation with masks, I'm relying on the same health experts that I would rely on in every other health situation. I'm not relying on Fauci, whom I had never heard of, like most of us before this started. I'm relying on the folks that I would have relied on, if I had cancer or if one of my children, heaven forbid, came down with some disease. That's who I'm relying on. And I'm not a doctor. I don't have MD after my name. And it's just like I also don't repair my own car. I rely on some experts for that as well. And I don't necessarily think that everyone out there with who is a doctor or an epidemiologist or whatever, they're not infallible either. But they come at this with a tremendous amount of experience and expertise that I don't have. And so that's who I've relied on. And I've tried to stay out of this, the debate that is happening that seems to be broken down very much by this distrust. And look, don't get me wrong. I don't fault anyone for distrusting the government, and that's not just at a federal or state level. The entire reason that I ran for the position I'm in now on the Florence 1 board was because I did not trust what the board was doing with our tax money, 9 years ago, and so I was in that same spot, and I tried complaining and about it, and standing up trying to rally some other folks behind me, and at the end I just said, you know what, if I'm not willing to really jump in the fight, then I need to just shut up. So I jumped in the fight.
Last question: if there's a hearing about the proviso Tuesday in the South Carolina Supreme Court, City of Columbia versus the AG, or the AG actually filed the suit against the City of Columbia, which implemented a mask mandate. City of Columbia let the City Council do it instead of the school board. I think the school board blessed what the City Council did, but there will be a legal hearing on Tuesday at the South Carolina Supreme Court regarding this. If the Supreme Court rules in favor of the AG and the proviso is interpreted as Phillip Lowe interpreted it here yesterday, and the AG's office has interpreted it, does the school board have any interest in revisiting that decision? Does that change anything about the nature of which kids will or will not wear masks moving forward?
That'll have to be something we take a look at when that happens. We are also reliant on our legal team, and when it comes to a lot of this stuff, And we've already seen. I think it was the Charleston school district that said that admitted that they couldn't enforce their mandate. I'm in a wait and see.
Lawyers
position.
get paid to argue.
Absolutely.
In essence, that's there'll be an argument Tuesday that'll affect in some way, shape, or form. And I appreciate you saying we'll have to consider it. I mean, obviously you will. You'll have to consider.
I don't want to borrow trouble from tomorrow, but you have to. I mean, when that happens, whatever the result is, then we will have to. Either way, that will have a influence on what our next move is.
Well, like I said, continue. I'm sorry.
But at the end of the day, again, what we're trying to do is keep our children safe. And that's the thing that I want to make sure that we come back around to is that I've yet to have someone be able to tell me what is an acceptable number of children to get sick. What's an acceptable number of children to put in the ICU?
Is that a fair question to ask? Is that a fair question to ask? I mean, we mitigate risk in our lives. We accept risk in our lives. When it's a kid, it's different. I mean, as I said, it's 361 kids or 385 kids. If it's my kid, it's the only kid.
Absolutely.
And I accept that. But surely we accept risk as part of our daily lives. You and I would agree to that.
Yes.
And we try to mitigate as much of that risk in as reasonable a fashion as we possibly can. Look, I want to say this on the air in front of Barry and everybody else that has been here. It's easy for me to give an opinion. I don't vote on anything any longer, and I like it that way. I really like it that I don't have to. And I respect these guys. Despite Barry and I disagreeing on this, and despite, Superintendent O'Malley and I disagree, I certainly respect. And I'd ask you to do the same. I mean, it's a hard job. It's a complicated task at times. And I'll tell you this, it is a thankless world to be in local politics. And I applaud a guy who didn't vote on this particular issue, but has gone to the record and said he would have voted and the reasons he would have done that. And that's a stand. I mean, I don't know a stand-up guy accepting responsibility for what he believes. At the end of the day, that's American democracy in action. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. We'll take a break. We'll be back in just a minute. Let's go to the phone.
Here's Daphne and Dylan listening to Live 95. Hello, Daphne.
Good morning, guys. Your guy just now, that's on the school board in Florence 1, said that all the children should wear a mask and that he believes the masks work. But yet he turns around and says, hey, I want that child that's not wearing a mask to put one on to protect the one that is wearing a mask. Now, that's a total contradiction, because if you think the mask work, that child that's wearing the mask is protected, correct? So that just bothers me. And it's the same thing with the transgender, the gender fluidity. You've got a few people through the National Education Association mandating what our kids have to listen to. You've got the teachers union telling the DHEC that they should, in fact, lay down policy to vaccinate all children. And that's coming. You just wait. Because they are never satisfied with doing their thing and letting us have liberty. They don't mind breaking the law to get what they want. Okay? Thanks.
One of the most interesting things that have been proven to be true, the CDC guidance included about 2 paragraphs from the American Teacher Federation. Oh. That's strange bedfellows. But you know what they're up to. Back in a minute. Hey, one thing in the debate, if somebody calls your name, you get a chance to respond, right? But that's always the rules of the debate game. Barry Townsend, school board member, specifically called Representative Phillip Lowe by name. And I think Representative Lowe was on the phone. Am I right? Is that you, Phillip?
Yes, I'm on.
Okay. So counterpoint being made here. During the conversation with the school board member, Barry Townsend, he brought up some of the inconsistencies of what he perceived the General Assembly talking about, follow this rule, but you don't obey your own rule. I want you to respond there.
On that particular point, a prior legislative body came up with a formula to fund schools. That doesn't bind a future legislative body to follow it. A budget every year is an independent, standalone type of a law that's passed, and it lasts for 1 year. So it doesn't. Those funding formulas just don't keep going and bind us in the future. But that's really not what I call it about. We're a nation of laws, and when a law is written, this year this was a 1-year law, and you're supposed to follow the law until a court overturns it or the year expires, and that's the way our system works. You don't get to pick and choose which ones you like or what you want to ignore, and that's my issue. Not that the school doesn't have the best interest of the kids at heart. When we made this law, no one was wearing a mask. It was last May, and this past May, and COVID looked like it was over. history may say that we passed a bad law. And we only did it for 1 year, so because you never know what the future brings. But they've got to follow that law until a court overturns it, or it expires, or somebody changes the law. And how does it look to a kid in school when they're told to obey the rules, but the district doesn't obey the rules?
Philip, from that perspective, is there any interest in the General Assembly reconvening and addressing the lack of punishment and not following this proviso? If you and I agree that the school districts that have instituted a mask mandate are in violation of state law per the proviso, but the proviso, and I think you and I agree, doesn't really have much punishment associated or attached. Is there any consensus amongst the body to revisit the proviso and institute a punishment so the school districts that we believe are breaking the law will be forced to follow the law?
Well, I hope it doesn't come to that. I hope the courts look at it and make a ruling that it is or isn't going to apply to schools, and we move forward here. It doesn't do anybody good to get in and argue about these things over and over again and stick in punishments. What I say is as far as I know, when we pass even a 1 year proviso, it's obeyed, and it's obeyed without having to put in a punishment like we're going to put a superintendent in jail or fine him or remove money from the district. Nobody wants to hurt the kids or hurt a superintendent. I think we're in trying times now, but we need to follow the rule of law. And if the courts disagree, they can't disagree with our intention. They just have to say that something wasn't quite worded right, or somebody that doesn't fall in somebody's wheelhouse. So I'm not after vindication, but it does kind of show that we've kind of set up two Americas now, and there's a lot of people that believe one way and a lot of people believe the others, and I don't know, maybe we just got to move to the right state to have it your way.
Thank you, Philip. Appreciate you calling in, my man. Very well explained.
Thank you, sir.
Wake Up Carolina on the iCarrier Talk Network.